Colleen, are we supposed to be able to hear Josh right now?
At Foster, we have a fourth grader, Elijah Jensen, and also a fourth grader, Tyson Grazer. At Hawthorne, we have a first grader, Kinley Oakley, and a second grader, Leif Curtis. And at Holly, a sixth grader, Mariano Haskett Caldera, and a sixth grader, Aaliyah Brown. And then at Oak Heights, a kindergartner, Sawyer Smith, and a fourth grader, Piper Hall. And then at the charter school, a second grader, Wyatt Erickson, and a fifth grader, Henry Gaynor. So congratulations to those kids, and you'll have a plaque being delivered to you soon. And your names will go into a drawing for a prize at the end of the year as well. So next we have the agenda approval, and we do have some changes. We had some consent agenda items that were added here. So everybody should have a copy of that in front of you.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the revised agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
It was Jim Corley.
They both raised their hand.
It was Mike first and Jim second.
All right, no discussion. So all in favor? Aye. And opposed? All right, we will continue with the agenda. Do we have any public comments this evening? Do not see anybody, so, all right. Student personnel reports, certified and classified representatives.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can just barely hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. I'm Elizabeth Hunt, representative of the Sweet Home Education Association, and I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about the schedules that we have put together in terms of what the district has come up with and the way in which they have heard the needs of a lot of our teachers and staff and a lot of our folks who have expressed the things that they need in the classroom to make things really work. And I know that it also comes together with so many different levels of like transportation and food and cleaning services, and all of those things have come together to create something that, despite COVID conditions, I think are going to be very workable for everyone around. And so I just wanted to really thank the district for being so receptive to all of these different conflicting voices, and thank you all as board members, and encourage you to approve the schedules that the district is putting forward today as president. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, and I don't see Velma up on there, so. All right, so we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, the first item, I'd like to invite up Robert Chamick, who's the executive director for the Jamboree, and while he's coming up, I don't know if we have the picture. Come on up, Robert. And kind of get situated. We have a photo of the 4A state champion volleyball team, and you got bumped, Robert. We just want to take a moment to recognize a really big deal with the Jamboree, but you got bumped because these ladies are a big deal for Sweet Home. They played sisters, and they won three out of a set of four, series of four, so hats off to them, great job. We just want to take a moment to recognize the volleyball team. Good job. Round of applause.
And I watched some of those games via Facebook, and they were pretty amazing.
And I'd like to welcome you. So first on my report is Robert Chamick. He is the executive director for the Jamboree. We've had a 30-year near 30-year relationship with the Jamboree. They host nearly 20,000 folks, and Robert will correct me if I'm wrong, to come to the concerts here in Sweet Home. Robert's going to give us information about how the concert will be different. We're anticipating a difference this year because he's required to have the concert under state or county COVID protocols. So he's going to talk a little bit about that. I'd like to let you know that we've gone through the contract that we have with the Jamboree. It's in good standings. We've had our PACE insurance look at it, and scrutinize regarding COVID adjustments, and we're in good standing. And so, Robert, I'd like to give you an opportunity, and maybe if we're lucky, he said he might announce exclusively here tonight some major talent. I thought maybe we could have these breaking news. Okay.
You're going to have to wait until I get through city council. Then.
All right.
So as most of you guys know me, Robert Shammick. I'm a lifelong member of Sweet Home, born and raised here. Been involved with the Jamboree for, man, time goes by really quick. I'd like to say 10 years, but it's probably more like 17 years now. Piggy's over there going up. And it's just one of those events that, growing up here, I never thought I'd be a part of. But once I got into it, it's really been life-changing, not just for me, but for a lot of people that are involved in the Jamboree. It's something that we do every year, typically, and people absolutely love to come to Sweet Home. The lake, the river, go through town, all the campsites. And so I guess my goal here tonight would just be to let you know that we would love to put the Oregon Jamboree on this year, if it's possible. If we don't, it's going to be really tough to sustain for another year, which, that would be heartbreaking to have something so awesome go away that, gives back so much to our community. And I've been working with Tom, and I work with Josh, and, the fire chief, the police chief, Ray, at the city. So, I guess you guys can fire some questions at me if you have some questions, but we're going to kind of just move forward in the hopes to have 5,000 people, and it's all based on still being in level high, which I hope to God we're not still in level high come August. So it's based on square footage, 86 square feet per person, and so our field size will allow us to have roughly 5,000 patrons mixed with some volunteers, and and our COVID plan right now is based on the regulations that are set right now, because you can't predict. You got to do it as today. We're hoping they ease up a little bit, they change, but if they don't, we have to abide by state regulations, health code. I don't want the fire marshal or OSHA or any of those guys cracking down on us. And, most of you guys have been involved with the Jamboree, and we try to run a top-notch program. And hopefully, by the time the Jamboree comes around, there won't be any questions about what the protocol for COVID's going to be. But until then, it's just we're kind of hanging out right there. Yeah.
Good, Jim.
So are you going to change the camping around any because you have less people camping, or?
So here's the odd part about it is we sold out. 2020 was going to be a record year for us. So in 2019, we pre-sell all of our campsites, all of the reserved seats. If you're a ticket holder, you have the ability. So like right now, we should have 2022 tickets on sale. But so we sell them over a year in advance. So we sold out all of our camping for 2020, and we sold roughly 4,500 tickets. 2,200 of those are reserved seat tickets. So we took all those and we rolled them over to 2021. So just because we're going to have less people, we're still going to have the same exact number of campers. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think it's going to be a real unique experience for those 5,000 patrons that get to come to the Jamboree. I think the other 10,000 that won't be able to come are going to be a touch upset. But, we have to do something. So yeah, probably the same exact number of campers, but just a lot less patrons on the field. So you're not going to have as many, people parking up and down Main Street and stuff like that.
What about vendors?
So, vendors, since we only going to have roughly 5,000, we scaled back because we still want enough choices for our patrons, but we also want our vendors to have a successful year too. If we have 200 vendors and, it just doesn't work out. So we did scale back the vendors. We might switch some stuff up and not use Sankey Park this year, just because it's just not in my budget to spend all that money on fencing and tables and chairs. And we're still going to run 2 stages, but the second stage will be on, it'll be on kind of the school district side, but back on city property. So.
Other questions for our guest? Well, I'd like to, if there's no questions, I'd like to thank Robert. I don't know if I've been able to thank you publicly recently. The Jamboree really helps out our students. Staff works some of, as you know, the concessions, and they do different fundraising that really benefits our activities and our sports. And I know that you personally go around to different boards and organizations and give and help out.
Well, it's always fun to cut those checks to the school district, Larry Johnson is a huge part of fundraising. I mean, without that guy, my goodness, I don't know where, he's helped raise literally millions of dollars throughout the course of the Jamboree. And so it's super fun to cut those checks and give them back to the school district and then get them dispersed. So all the teams that get involved, and I know that, I've gotten letters, from coaches and stuff that said, thank you, we were able to buy all new laptops, or I was able to buy all new soccer balls and soccer cleats for the kids, or socks, or it's fun getting those letters and, knowing that we're helping out kids in our own community, so it's a good time.
Well, we're looking forward to this year. Can't do positive attitude. We're having a great concert.
Yeah, and like I said, we don't want to be breaking any rules, and we would never put, you guys in a position to get in any kind of trouble with the state. So if we can do it, we'd love to do it. If somebody steps in and says we can't, we'll have to go to plan B, whatever that is. So I definitely appreciate your time.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you. Next in my report is the enrollment update. If you go to your packet, B2, on the first page, you can see our total enrollment. Since January, we increased by 30 students. February, 28 students, and then this last month, March, 14 students. So we've gone up in our enrollment every month, which is not typical, as you know, for this time of year. Excuse me. And that's mainly attributed to families and students feel more comfortable going back to in-person learning. And so we're happy about our enrollment, and we'd like to get to the 2019 year enrollment, which puts us about at 2,300. So our enrollment is climbing again. Any questions regarding enrollment? If no questions, I'd like to move to the health and safety section of my report. I think, Patty, you want to report from there if I turn the mic over to you? But let me set you up. So if you go to, in the packet, B3, the next page, you'll see the metrics for returning in person. So that page, those are the new requirements that ODE put together and issued in January. So you'll see Case County rate of 200, then next, that's for K through 12 to return. And then you'll see for middle school and high schools, 200 to 350, the case counts. And so that's the new guidance that was issued in January per the governor's directives, I should say, that she had in December. I presented this last month. And then if you look on the next page, now this is old, you'll see the case counts, and I just took a snapshot that OHA puts forth. And so these numbers, like I said, are a little bit old. You'll see Lynn County at 67, 90, 88. Week before last, it was 120, and the most recent reporting that came out probably 3 hours ago is 177. So it is climbing, but it's under that 200 mark, and so it's something we should watch, but we're still in proper specs. Do you have any questions about that? Patty, would you like to, well, hang on, let me do one more thing. Is it on that, because I'm on a roll, Patty. On the next page, you'll see the updates for the READY, so you'll see in our board packet, RSSL. So these are the Ready Safe Learner School new guidelines that were issued, and you'll see this was March 22nd. So over on the right-hand side of this document, the key updates that the state provided for us, and these are the guidelines, the key guidelines that allow us to bring our students back to more in-person instruction. So you'll notice key updates. Elementary schools must maintain at least 3 feet of physical distance between students to the maximum extent possible. So this is a reduction from the 6-foot rules. So this is allowing us to bring our students back, I'll later report, to 5-day week, full days for K through 6. And you'll see our plans for 7 through 12. High school must maintain 3 feet of physical distance between students to a maximum extent possible when the county rates under 200, and we are at this point. And then it goes on, middle high school must at least maintain at least 6 feet physical distance between students to the maximum extent possible when county rates are greater than 200. And then it goes on, I won't read this whole thing to you, but they removed the 35 square foot provision, which really was restrictive to us and to get our students back to a full-time status in classrooms, because we had to divide our classrooms in half. Our transportation greatly, and I'll report on that here in a little bit. So those are some general, those were the things that were happening in March, which will bring us to this board meeting today. We can talk about opening up our schools even more. And Patty, you drilled down in this, you have more to report with health and safety.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover with our kids coming back for longer periods of time. So we do continue to do visual screening upon entry at all K through 6 schools, and that's just where we have adults who are watching the kids. They have a list of things to look for in case they're not feeling well. But in reality, we do that. We should be doing that all the time, whether there's COVID or not. We're watching our kids. And then the staff themselves are supposed to do self-checks every morning. The things that are changing because of the longer period of time at school, we are allowing individual, what we call face covering breaks. So if a kid in class is struggling with his learning and you can tell he just needs a break, they can have a place in the room away from the other kids where they can take their mask off and sit for 3 to 5 minutes and just kind of get their bearings again and be able to focus. We have group breaks now that will be outside. We have covered areas at the elementary school, so what they're talking about doing, what you're allowed to do is use hula hoops, which we have tons of them at all the schools. You just throw them all out there, that's their space inside that hula hoop. Once they're inside there, their mask comes off and they can relax and just kind of visit from they have to be 6 feet apart outside if they have their mask off, but they can all kind of visit that way, and they can even have out there if they want. There is an opportunity to do outdoor learning. I'm sure that will happen at some point. My other concern was with the warmer weather coming up, we're going to make sure everyone understands they can open their windows. There will be fans provided if they need them. They might need a few more extra, we're really flexible. They might need more breaks than usual during that time. We're flexible. The only places that we require the 6 feet still is in the gym, the library, the big, large gathering places. We'll keep the kids separate. For lunch, they need to be 6 feet apart, which they will be. We're rotating classes in schools in different manners, but each school has their own setup, and that way they can take their mask off and eat their lunch in the cafeteria. We're getting there. We're getting closer all the time to being back to where we were. All we need to do is wait for that, take your mask off. That's what everybody's waiting for, but I think it's going to go really well. The kids are doing great already. I will say that because it's spring and the weather's warming up, I've seen an uptick of sickness in the school, but none of it has been COVID. It's all been, these kids go home, their parents take them to the doctor, they get them tested, none of them have been positive, so we're doing good here. Hand washing is really the biggest thing, just like in the hospitals. I just push hand washing like crazy. We are going to have a video for you that we're going to make of us. We have these little houses with UV lights under them, and the kids have a special spray. It's kind of like a forensic thing for the kids. They spray their hands with, we spray their hands with it, and they wash their hands really good in soap and water, put them under the lights, and they can actually see whatever they missed left on their hands. It's kind of a nice way for them to learn how important it is to really scrub their hands, and we do it clear till their hands are clear. And make a little video so you guys can see sometime what they do. The kids love it. So we're going to kind of push that at the end of this year, just because hand washing will continue once COVID's over. I mean, it's very important anyway. So nothing else much to report. We're just doing great.
Any questions while we have our district nurse with the microphone? Thanks, Patty.
Okay, for my second portion of this report, I'd like to invite up our Chief Academic Officer to talk about some of the programming adjustments we've been able to make. So if you go to your packet, 5B5, this is a letter that we wrote to the parents, letting them know about our instructional adjustments. So this was issued April 7th. And what I tried to do was outline some of the things that we had to accomplish in order to apply the new Oregon Department of Education regulations to our own operations. So the first thing we let the parents know is transportation. So previous to previous operations, we could only have about 20 students on a bus, plus or minus some students. And we in a normal year, we transport anywhere from 700 to 800 students. So this really restricted our ability to get all of our students to school every day. So with modifications, we can double the students on our buses. And we have seating patterns and protocols that will continue to have, use safety, health and safety in mind on our buses. But because we get more students on a bus, we can increase bringing all of our kids back. However, we do not still have enough buses and drivers combined to be able to do all operations at one time, K through 12. So we'll have to do two routes. We'll have to do an early morning for K through 6, get the students to school at 8 o'clock, and then the buses will go back out to get the grades 7 through 12. So that's the first thing that we had to accomplish, and we're very proud of our transportation department. They worked hard with the new routing systems and figuring out how to do this, so they got that completed. Second thing we had to look at is we're offering comprehensive distance learning to still approximately 25 across the board if you had to average percent of our students. Some grades higher, some grades lower in percentage. So these students and families still choose to learn remotely, remote distance learning only. Okay, and the ODE regulations say that districts, we gave a commitment to our community that we would provide this for our families, but also it's a regulation from ODE says we should do that. We will do that. So we're delivering that. But operationally, what we've done, and you'll see it in the consent agenda tonight, we closed on that this hours ago, is to hire some staffing for grades 4 through 6 to deliver comprehensive distance only to those students remaining on remote learning. That gives our grades 4 through 6 teachers the ability to solely work on in-person learning, much like our K through 3. Earlier, we reported months ago that we made that operational decision because we had some title money, and we used that funding to purchase staffing, if you will, to deliver comprehensive distance learning only. Okay, grades 7 through 12 gets more complicated because there's a lot more course offerings in a high school schedule. So trying to staff that, it's really not attainable right now to find that staffing period out there. So what this schedule will allow us to do, you'll see that the high school and junior high schedule is modified so those students will go home earlier. The staff will then carry on with the comprehensive distance learning only to those students in the afternoons. So overcoming that obstacle was important for us to do as well. Nutrition services, we wanted Millie, she's been, her team is doing a fantastic job through fire evacuations, through rain, I don't know if we got any snow, but sleet maybe, delivering students to families, meals to families. So the production line will continue in the same fashion. So we will do grab-and-go lunches for kids. At the high school level and junior high, they complete the day, they will grab their lunch and go home. We will not have to organize the 6 foot needed when you eat. The rules say you must maintain 6 feet with the mask off. So operationally, we won't be working on that with those kids. However, with K through 6, we'll have longer lunch periods, I should say more frequent lunches, rotations I should say, to get a smaller number of students into a cafeteria so they can take their masks off and eat. So those students will grab and sit, if you will. So the same sort of lunches, production for Millie and her nutrition services, but we'll have 2 different methods of that for our students. Classroom and facilities, Josh Darwood led a group of teachers and administrators from the safety team to figure out classroom caps and room arrangements that will be safe for students throughout the district. So we have a standard for that. That was a team effort. So we're good to go there. So these are just some of the operational details that we worked on in the last 2.5, 3 weeks to be able to close in and deliver full day schedules, 5-day a week to our K through 6, and 5-day a week modified schedule for 7th through 12. We really worked on looking at a full day for 7th through 12, but this is what we can accomplish. We can execute this, what I'm delivering you operationally with the materials that we have. And I'd like to have Rachel talk a little bit more about the actual schedules for the day.
Certainly, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Reddick and members of the board. It is my goal tonight to take you visually through the 3 levels of schedules, and you'll find those on 5B5 of your packet. It's interesting to note that each of the 3 levels is choosing to approach comprehensive distance learning in a very different way for many of the reasons that Superintendent Yara said. But some other things to keep in mind as we walk through these schedules. It also depended how many staff were in the building. It depended how many courses were being offered. It depended on hiring. We knew we wouldn't be able to hire 40 comprehensive distance learning teachers for secondary. Depended also on the number of students and the number of classrooms in each building. And then finally, it also depended on siblings, because one of the things that we've heard a lot about this year is how hard parents have worked to try and find the coverage and the supervision of the littlest ones. And if we can get our oldest students home first, that's just something we can give back to the parents, knowing how hard they've been working for a year to try and make things happen. So all of those pieces came into play. You'll see exactly what Superintendent Yera said on the elementary school schedule, same as it always was, 8 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, with a 1:30 early release on Wednesdays. And the bottom box, again, this is just really important to reiterate, comprehensive distance learning will be different at K-6. We're having separate comprehensive distance learning, or CDL, teachers to teach that. Parents have been notified well in advance, and that starts on April 19th as well. We want to make sure that all of our teachers, K-6, can fully concentrate on working with the students on site. Are there any questions on the K-6 schedule? Okay, let's go next to the junior high schedule. Their approach to comprehensive distance learning is going to be different than the high school. You'll see the word live stream up near the top of the page. They are approaching this the way that grades 4 through 6 have been approaching this since at least February, which is to try and be teaching live and capturing it live at the same time. They're able to do that, again, because of the number of staff they have, much less than at the high school to make that happen. They have the bandwidth to make it happen. So that's how they are approaching it, but they're optimizing their afternoons, really focusing in on students who are having a harder time meeting or exceeding expectations in academics. They'll have what they call student work hub, as well as limited in-person and one-on-one time, 4 days a week from 1:15 to 4 o'clock. And then Wednesdays are a bit different. They offer Tiger Care. Some of those components have been up and running just for the last month or so, but it involves counseling. If kids need a haircut, they can request a haircut, get their clothes washed. Those kinds of things are happening on Wednesdays, and I wasn't sure if you are aware of that. It would be nice to get a report on that eventually, what's happening there. Are there any questions about the junior high schedule? Okay. Then let's go to the high school schedule. Again, they have different needs than K-6 and the junior high. They, for the most part, are not live streaming. There's a little bit of that, which they call roomies and zoomies, but very little of that. Mostly they're trying to keep separate students who are having intensive comprehensive distance learning, where they're focused just with those kids and they're not trying to do both at the same time. You'll see that comprehensive distance learning Tuesdays and Thursdays is only for CDL students from 1:25 to 3:40. It's repeat sessions of what was done live with students on site. And then they've also made time 2.5 afternoons a week to be providing that limited in-person, providing support for students that need a little extra time, maybe one-on-one office hours or one-on-one support. Can I answer any questions on that? Okay.
Now, how many classes are you able to offer in, say, a high school schedule like this? Normally they got, what, five classes through a day?
So yeah, I can, and I think we have our high school administrators on Zoom with us, but, so what we determined at the beginning of this year was, if you remember, we went from a 5-period day, was it 2 years ago? Last year, we went to a 7-period day in order to get kids more electives and shorten up the class periods. And so this year, because of COVID, we made an operational decision to make the classes longer and go with basically a block schedule. So to answer your question directly, right now they have 4 classes. They already did 3 first quarter, and so we broke the quarters up. It was just much easier to manage for students and teachers in terms of trying to do CDL and limited in-person with 7 classes, rather, so we're just doing it with 4. So that's how we made those operational adjustments, more of a kind of a block schedule. And we will go back to our regular schedule for next year, but it's just simplified things for families and students and teachers this year. Well, thank you, Rachel. This is, do you have any, does the board have feedback regarding the return to full operations for our K through 6, 5 days a week, and returning to modified 5-day-a-week operations for grades 7 through 12? So operationally, does the board have feedback for me?
Well, then. Yeah, go for it.
Kids need it. They really do. They need normalcy back. It's been too long, taking too much of an effect. We need to get these kids back to a normal life.
I appreciate that. And, for the older kids, they're going 2 days a week. So they'll be going 5 days a week. So it is a great increase for our older kids as well. And developmentally for our younger ones, they're not as inclined to be able to work independently. So we really, focused our efforts there as well to help those kids out. And so as Elizabeth Hunt said, the union was a partner with us and helped us get here, as well as the teachers on the safety teams, the classified workers. So it was really a good, partnership across the board with all of our staff, and that includes all of our departments as well. So we've done a really good job in Sweet Home, being positioned to be able to do this at each junction that we've been given an opportunity. And so we're ready to take that next step for our kids. And as Rachel was saying, our families, they've twisted, they've partnered, they've modified their schedules, they've partnered with us in teaching their kids. And so, I know this is going to be good news, for them. And we'll do it safely. Okay, that concludes my superintendent report.
All right, thanks, Tom. So next we have the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody prefer that I read these off? Okay. List of hirings and resignations and things like that, so.
I have a question on it.
Yeah, sure.
I see Dustin Nichols taking a leave of absence. Does that include from coaching or just from teaching?
Just from teaching, not coaching.
He'll continue to coach.
That, continuing to coach, leaving that to Dustin, our grade football coach, and our athletic director and the admin to determine. But I anticipate, yes, continue to coach. This is just for the leave requested for teaching.
Okay. Any discussion on these items? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. And opposed? All right, motion passes. Information and discussion, budget update and safety information. Kevin?
Okay, thanks, Jason. First budget update, item 7A in the board packet. If you compare year-to-date spending this year to the same time period last year, we have spent over $444,000 less. Two key reasons for that. We've seen substantial savings on substitutes so far this year, and we've also saved, we've had some unfilled positions, primarily on the classified side. And so those are the main reasons for why spending is down so much so far this year. Kind of our big budget news, it's on the next page in the board packet. We recently found out what our allocation is for the American Rescue Plan. This includes substantial funding for school districts. Congressman DeFazio put out a press release for all of the districts within the 4th Congressional District in Oregon. Sweet Home Share, you can see it, it's the bottom of the first column, is just over $4 million. And so next month, we have our budget committee meeting. We're going to be talking about our plans for this, and so just be sure to have that on your calendar. It's going to be immediately before the board meeting, and I believe the plan is to have that here at the junior high school again. So lots of stuff going on with the budget, and it should make for an interesting budget meeting.
All right, no questions for Kevin?
Okay. Moving on to safety, we did have 2 reportable incidents during the month of March. They both involved soccer coaches. We had one coach who suffered a concussion when she was hit in the head by a soccer ball twice during the same practice. We also had another coach suffer a torn Achilles tendon while he was jumping up to receive a soccer ball. And that's it.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Next, we have a facilities update from Josh Starwood.
I think you guys saw it.
Was that it?
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the tour, we appreciate that. And then, school boundaries.
I'd like to invite up Kevin Strong.
Okay, thank you. Let me get the presentation on the screen.
And while Kevin is getting the presentation on the screen, in your packet, 7C is a letter that I sent out to parents dated April 5th.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, first to begin, just to go over what we'll cover tonight. First, we're going to recap the information that was shared at the March school board meeting. Second, we'll talk about new developments that have happened since the March meeting. About Josh, is it possible maybe on the screen? Perfect. You can see that rather than looking at me, you can look at the presentation. Third, we're going to talk about our proposed plan, and we'll finish with questions and comments that we've received so far. Kind of going back over some of the items we talked about last month. First, attendance areas have not been adjusted since Holly and Crawfordsville merged in 2011. Enrollment during the past decade has been growing at Hawthorne and Foster, declining at Oak Heights, and staying about the same at Holly. When you dig into the numbers at Hawthorne during that time, or since from December 2008 to December 2019, which is pre-pandemic, Hawthorne has experienced an overall change or overall increase of 54 students. At Foster, we've seen an overall increase of 49 students during that time period. At Oak Heights, we've seen an overall decline of 69 students. Yes, Jason?
How many of those increased students are not from the area that they're supposed to be in? Like they've moved in from, or they've asked to go to that school because they like the principal or they like a certain teacher or whatnot. I know that happens.
That throughout the district, over the years have been very supportive of parents that wanted to go to a different school, and so we have that occurring at all of our schools. When you look at the Hawthorne numbers, that definitely, there's a component of that. Over the past 3 years, Hawthorne has tried to say, or has said no to an increasing number of those requests. And so most of the students at Hawthorne that are intra-district transfers tend to be in the higher grades and not in kindergarten, first and second grade. But that's a good point, that is part of those numbers. As you talk about it too, and I'll go back here to, you can see it at both Foster and Hawthorne. You'll see in that 2014-2015 time period, there was kind of a big jump, and that was the charter school had been in kind of a growth mode, and then in 1 year, they decided to kind of change their approach, and so a lot of those students, for whatever reason, were absorbed into Foster and Hawthorne, not into Oak Heights that year. So, I'm jumping ahead now, Holly Crawfordsville. Really, this goes back to December 2010, which was the last year that we had the two separate schools. And since then, enrollment it's bumped up and down, but it's been relatively stable. So going through to December 2019, before the pandemic, we saw an overall change of 6 students as an increase.
So Kevin, how much room is there at Holly for more students?
At Holly, we have all of the classrooms filled. We do have room where we have some smaller classes there. And so, we could take, in most of the classes, you could take, say, 2 to 6 more students, and we'd still have good class sizes. So, yeah, if you know anyone that wants a good rural school, encourage them to consider Holly. Okay, moving on, and thanks, Josh. Just talking about kind of growth that we're expecting right now. Definitely seeing it in the Hawthorne area. The apartment complex behind 7-Eleven will include 48 units, and it's nearing completion right now. Also in the Hawthorne area, this will be further out, but the Planning Commission has okayed a 54-lot subdivision that essentially would be Duck Hollow 3. It's just east of the existing Duck Hollow subdivision, which would be south if you're on Highway 20 of where you see the storage units. Going out to Foster, this lot is off of 45th Avenue. It would be kind of behind, now it's Point S Tire. A developer there has plans for 46 lots. Also in the Foster area, there's the east side of the airport property, old airport property, which is awaiting development. Out at Oak Heights, there is room for residential growth, but nothing right now on the horizon. This is looking at the Canyon Creek subdivision. You can see there are roads where that could be extended, but we're not aware, in talking with the city, they're not aware of the owner having any immediate development plans there.
There's also a current development on Long Street at 38th, so even closer than the Duck Hollow 3, where they're putting in more apartments.
Yep, and guess what? You're jumping ahead, and we're going to cover that in just a minute. So, perfect segue there, Jason. New development since the March board meeting. I think you read my mind, in fact. Work has begun on a 40-unit apartment complex just east of Hawthorne. This is the one you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay. And from talking with Angela Clegg at the city, the developer hopes to complete construction by the end of 2021 on it. Also, another developer has announced plans for a 26-lot subdivision west of Foothills Drive, which is within the Hawthorne boundaries. You can kind of see the junior high school there in the upper left-hand side and kind of see where that development will go. Foothills kind of just dead ends right now. And I think the plan is to run Foothills through and then kind of have it connect to Harding over there with, it's kind of interesting, there would be lots, single lots on the north side and then kind of double lots on the south side, so a lot and then kind of an access road to get to another lot there, so we can fit 26 into that space. So, kind of with all of that information, trying to figure out, what makes sense for boundaries. This is the current boundary map. The red on the left-hand side is Holly. The Yellow on the right-hand side is Foster. At this time, we're proposing no changes to those areas. What we're looking at is kind of in the middle there. You can see Oak Heights is blue, Hawthorne as green. What we're proposing is that the Hawthorne area that is currently north of Highway 20, so this would be the green area now with the white stripes, that would become part of the Oak Heights boundary. What's kind of interesting about it, you think of all of the property near the top, which is north of the South Sandiam River, all of, unless they drive all the way out to the lake and cross the dam, people there are crossing the Pleasant Valley Bridge. And so geographically, they are already closer to Oak Heights. But I think back after Pleasant Valley School was closed, we kind of had the reverse issue where we had more students at Oak Heights and we had capacity at Hawthorne. And so the boundary was drawn in such a way that they would go to Hawthorne. But really, geographically, they are closer to Oak Heights, and so what we're proposing would have them go to the closest school. There is also a section on the south side of the South Sandiam River from the Pleasant Valley Bridge to 18th and north of Highway 20 that's currently Hawthorne. We're proposing that area too goes to Oak Heights. When you look at it on the map, there is logic to that. It does, the blue will now kind of just extend kind of almost, not quite, but almost kind of straight up there and leave some room for in the Hawthorne area for continued growth in the future. So with that said, kind of what we've done so far, Tom sent out a letter to affected parents. That's in your board packet. It also has that map attached to the back so people can see the area that's being affected. The letter mentions that we will be having a meeting here at the junior high school tomorrow at 6:30 for affected families so they can come and get more information and ask questions and share their thoughts. Since we've notified families, we have received feedback and just kind of wanted to share with you some of the questions and comments that we've received so far. Some of it's been very positive about Oak Heights. One person said Oak Heights is awesome, great PTA, lots of fun things and friendly people. I'm glad we got to spend 6 years there. Another parent said, I'm okay with this switch. My daughter has been in an online school for over a year. She only went to Hawthorne for 7 months. Her new best friend will go to Oak Heights also. And on the flip side, we've had some critical comments. A couple of examples. You will be upsetting children's lives even more than they have had to this last year with the new kids to Oak Heights. And this seems like they may be anticipating a surge too soon. I highly doubt there will be a huge amount of kids moving into those apartments immediately. They really shouldn't move any kids like this right now. They've been through enough. Some of more questions that we've received. A common one is, how will this affect families who do not want to change schools? This was addressed in the letter. The letter states, we realize that changing schools can be challenging, so we are providing a transition plan for your consideration. If you have a student who is already attending Hawthorne and you would like them to continue to do so during the upcoming school year, they may, as long as you provide transportation. Buses serving the green area with white stripes on the map will only take elementary students to Oak Heights. With that said, we definitely want to be encouraging, just because of concerns about overcrowding at Hawthorne, to be encouraging families to consider Oak Heights. First of all, for reasons, very likely class sizes will be smaller at Oak Heights, which is good. Another reason too for parents to consider this is, we've talked, and you kind of see it at this building. The students, when they're in 7th grade, kids that have gone to Hawthorne and then go to Oak Heights, they're going to reach seventh grade and they're going to have two groups of friends. They're going to know their Hawthorne friends, plus they're going to make new friends at Oak Heights, and so they're going to have kind of that double advantage. So, with this said, we are allowing this transition plan, but we definitely want to be encouraging people to consider sending their students to Oak Heights. Kind of finally then, this is one of those, I read this comment, Hawthorne is like out of a movie. The all-around atmosphere is amazing, and you like to hear that, and that's great for Hawthorne. But then Tom and I were talking about that. I have a kid that goes to another elementary school in the Sweet Home School District. That's how I feel about my kid's school, and I think Tom was saying he has a kid that's going to another elementary.
He loves Foster.
Yeah, and so, that's how we want kids to feel about their school, and so, that's great to hear, but I think you can say that about all of our schools. And then finally, we had a person that made a comment, new school maybe, with multiple exclamation points. Okay, I don't see that in the near future, but we are starting a long-range facility planning process, and I would encourage parents to be a part of that as we take a look at what's ahead for the Sweet Home School District. So with that, again, tomorrow night we're having an information meeting here at the junior high school at 6:30 for affected families, and if you're hearing questions, concerns from anyone, please encourage them to attend. If they're unable to and they have questions, please encourage them to call the district office. And that's it.
So Tom, could you please remind us of the policy during the process for this? It's like this falls into the domain and not really in ours, or what?
Mike, Director Reynolds, that's true. There's and I don't know the exact number on the policy, maybe Julie can look it up, but it does fall under superintendent operations policy. However, if the board would like to design a policy where it is a board decision on boundaries, you can do that as well. But right now, it's under superintendent's decision-making, and so I know changing boundaries or, proposing that is difficult. Students grow accustomed to their schools and their teachers and principals. Sweet Home's growing, and that's a good thing. Folks are coming here, they're seeing how, pretty the area is. We have good-looking schools, great instruction, and it's causing some growing pains, and we need to make some decisions. And this is a step one in decision-making, and really, as you recall, the board recalls, it's been over a year ago, we set out to get people together for long-range facility planning, and COVID stopped us in our tracks, and so we haven't been able to get community folks together to talk about this. But that's really what needs to happen to address some more serious issues regarding the growth that we see, potential growth that we see coming, and that should be a rich conversation. But our decision-making is, well, we can do nothing, which I don't think is a responsible thing to do as we see the apartments popping up. We could, as a parent mentioned, we could take too large of an action too soon, and I don't think that will do us well when we should really sit at the table with a lot of different folks and talk about the future Sweet Home and our facilities and what we need to do as we look forward to a possible bond in 4 or 5 years or so.
Do we have any idea what the population of students is in that area that you put the white hash marks in?
Yep. Right now, for kindergarten, but the 6th graders will be moving to the junior high school. And so for kindergarten through 5th grade, we currently have just over 50 kids that are in that area that would be affected.
So it's not a significant number.
And that's throughout 1 through 6 or 1 through 12?
That's kindergarten through 5th grade. So,
6th or 8th is going to junior high now?
well, no, let me explain that. No. this year's sixth graders will be next year's seventh graders. And so we didn't look, this won't affect those because they're going to be at this building. And so among affected students, we don't know yet for the incoming kindergarten class for next year. What we do know, the existing kindergarten through fifth graders that would be affected by this proposal is just over 50.
The kindergarten hasn't attended any school yet.
And they're not, well, they are attending 5 days a week.
Well, the new kindergarten.
For next year. Correct, and we're just starting our registration process for them. And so it's going to be interesting. That, for enrollment too, and Tom, Rachel, and I have had this discussion, and if you look at the enrollment numbers, and this isn't just a Sweet Home issue, it's a nationwide issue. Our kindergarten enrollment this year is down, likely because some parents have held those kids back a year. And so it's going to be interesting to see what our kindergarten numbers are for the incoming year.
So Kevin, most of that 50-some kids you mentioned, are they in the Highway 20, between Highway 20 and the river, the whole area between 18th and the west is pretty good size?
Right. It was pretty much equally divided between kids that live on the north side of the South Santiam River that are currently in that Hawthorne Green area, and the kids that live between Pleasant Valley Bridge and 18th that are on the south side of the South Santiam River and but north of Highway 20.
Do you foresee a flux enough in the Oak Heights to shift back some of the kids back to like the Holly, possibly Crawfordsville again?
Then you brought that up. How about, Josh, can you bring up, this is showing the current areas right here. And I may even go back ways. There's one that's more zoomed in. What's tough is trying to figure out if we wanted to shift more students towards Holly, where you do that, because really the border really is right up to town, and so you have kids that live much closer to Oak Heights that we would then have to be shifting out to Holly, which is an option that I would definitely want to get input from those that would be affected before we would ever consider that. There has been some residential development out in the Holly Crawfordsville area, some with kids, and there, here and there places that could result in some additional, but what's happening really overall for Sweet Home, most of our growth is kind of taking place on the southeast side of Sweet Home. And it's trying to figure out how do we make it work, knowing that we still have schools that are, out on to the west.
All right, no other questions for Kevin?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, we don't have any action items tonight, so do we have any board comments? Yes.
I know that Dr. Horton, Larry Horton, had probably talked to you, but I would like to see if maybe we could schedule some time for those Western University folks that came out of our Community Health Committee that was formed to come and talk about their mentor program. Good.
After that, I'm talking to Dr. Horton, see if we get them scheduled to...
That'd be great.
Yep.
It's interesting, really interesting how they're doing this.
All right, any other board comments? Okay, no late items to speak of, so future board meetings, next board officers meeting is May 3rd at 3:30 in the superintendent's office, so if you have anything that you need to maybe try to get on the agenda, talk to one of us officers or Tom, and we'll discuss it there. Next board meeting is May 10th, 2021, in Tentatively at the district office boardroom.
Let's see, well, no, I'm pausing there because, Kevin, we're going to do is the budget meeting right before that?
Budget is right before that.
So budget meeting will be here, so most likely the.
I don't know if you advertise where the budget meeting's
We
at
did not
yet.
advertise, we need to advertise in the next week and a half, and so it would be helpful to make a decision.
This is a,
Just from the floor here, if you're gonna have 15 or 20 people in the audience and us out the way we are now, we may need to be in more like the cafeteria than,
Yeah. You know, that's a good point. So there's a number of factors, seeing what the county regulations will be at that point. seeing- We don't know.
for the worst.
Right. So let me take a look at that. I'll get that out to the board.
to be announced then.
Yep.
Okay, and then, as discussed, first budget committee meeting at 5:30, May 10th, location to be announced.
And we are starting the LBL budget for ESD starting tomorrow.
All right, we're adjourned.